Chapter 20 Flood. Utnapishtim. Take aboard the boat seed of all living things. Epic of Gilgamesh. A catastrophic flood myth is probably the most widely accepted as being found among all ancient peoples. As we have seen, however, there are many more worldwide myths that link together. As much as scientists would love to make these stories to be just a few local river floods here and there, the evidence of similar accounts from continent to continent is too strong. A global deluge did happen. The question is, how? One theory is that at the end of the last ice age, the warming of the Earth and subsequent polar ice melt caused extremely large masses of ice to fall into the ocean, which caused massive tidal waves and flooding the world over. Another is that an asteroid, such as the one that collided with the Indian Ocean, was the cause. The Bible mentions waters from the deep that came up. Perhaps water from Agartha, inner Earth, made its way to the other side. These theories may have happened in conjunction with each other. A global warming that covered much of the Earth with water when an asteroid hit, causing a domino effect of ice sheets collapsing and destruction by water for all. In the previous chapter, we touched on the Hindu system of time and cycles, and that there are many atoms, or first humans, called Manu. In our Kalpa Aeon, there have been 7 Manu, with the most recent being Shraddhadeva Manu. Shraddhadeva was a king that was warned by the fish avatar of Vishnu that he should build a boat to save his family and 7 sages from the impending global flood. Shraddhadeva did as he was told, and as a result became the common ancestor of humanity. On the boat, they brought seeds and animals and the holy writings. The boat landed in the Malaya Mountains. The root of the word Manu made it to Germany, where Manus was the father of the 3 Germanic tribes, much as Noah was the father of Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Other than the protagonist's name, the story remained basically the same through different Mesopotamian kingdoms. He was called Ziusudra by the Sumerians, and Atrahasis by the Akkadians, and Utnapishtim by the Babylonians. This man was the king and priest of the land when the gods decided to abandon all life on earth to die in a coming flood. Enki, or Ea, did not want to see all of his earthly descendants get wiped out, so he came to Ziusudra behind a reed wall and warned him to build a boat to save him and his family. Ziusudra built the boat and brought seeds of all the plants and animals with him. Taking the seed of animals is a lot more efficient than grown ones, as long as you have the ability to incubate them afterward. When the flood came, it also rained for 7 days and nights. Then Ziusudra opened a window and sent out a dove, then a swallow, but they returned. When he sent out a raven, it did not return. The boat landed on Mount Nasir. Enki advised Ziusudra to make an offering to Enlil, so he would let him live. Ziusudra built an altar and sacrificed an animal for Enlil, who came when he smelled the sweet savor. Enlil not only let him live, but gave him the gift of immortality. That is why Gilgamesh sought him out in his quest for the plant that keeps one alive. Interestingly, the gods left the earth during the flood, but were still able to view it. They complained of hunger because the flood wiped out their food supply. The Jewish version of the tale was clearly taken from the Babylonians during their captivity. Several lines from the Mesopotamian tablets were quoted word for word in the Jewish Bible. From there we get the story of Noah, but rather than 7 days and nights, there were 40. He is warned to build a boat to save his family and the animals. He released a dove that returned with an olive branch. He landed on Mount Ararat and made an animal sacrifice to Yahweh, who smelled the sweet savor. Later, Noah would get drunk and naked and curse his grandson for doing something to him while intoxicated. We have mentioned the Mesoamerican flood myths in passing when discussing the sky god and the different creations of people. In the Popol Vuh, the second wave of people were destroyed by a flood. This book of Mayan myth has many other synchronicities that are of interest to our study. One is the Mayan version of the Tower of Babel. The Mayan civilization lived on the eastern coast of Mexico. but they came from a land called Tulan that was across the ocean to the east. In Tulan was a citadel where the gods came to meet the people. All nations gathered there, among which were white people and black people, but all spoke the same language. The citadel or fortress was called the Seven Caves and the Seven Canyons, and was referred to as a mountain. The Babylonian word Kur means both mountain and temple, and was used in conjunction with the ziggurats. The Tower of Babel was the great ziggurat of which had 7 stories. The Jewish writings tell us that King Nimrod built a tower in order to reach the heavens. He was not so stupid to think an actual structure would reach the abode of the gods, but he did intend to use their technology to do so. That is why the gods said, "If they have begun to do this as one people, all having the same language, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth. The tower was an air station, patterned after the ones the gods used. Returning to the Popol Vuh account, the people were gathered at the citadel to meet the gods as they came out. Toil, Quetzalcoatl, was among the gods there. It was there that the languages of the nations were changed. Their languages came to be different. They did not hear each other clearly when they came from Tulan. Thus they split apart. They came in crowds from the east. They came from Tulan Zuiva, the 7 caves and the 7 canyons, as they are called in the ancient account. This story is backed up by the Book of Mormon, which tells of a group that left the Tower of Babel, built ships, and crossed the ocean to the Americas. Joseph Smith said that some of the people of the Book of Mormon landed a little south of the Isthmus of Darien, Panama. The timeline in the Book of Mormon fits closer to the pre-Mayan civilization called the Olmecs. As another interesting fact, DNA testing of red-hair people from New Zealand indicated that they came from the Arabian Peninsula to Central America, down to Peru, out to Easter Island, then to Hawaii, and ended in New Zealand. This finding also corroborates with the Book of Mormon story. A Hawaiian legend tells how Nu'u built a boat to save himself, his wife, their 3 sons, and 3 daughter-in-laws from a great flood. They landed on top of Mauna Kea, and Nu'u made sacrifices to the moon god. Kane, the creator god, descended to Earth on a rainbow to instruct Nu'u. Speaking of space stations, a Dogon story tells us that the ancestors of the Dogon took seeds as well as a male and female of every animal from the creator god Amma and placed them in a pyramid. The pyramid was then brought from the heavens to Earth by way of a rainbow. The animal and rainbow references bring to mind the Noah story. Traveling by rainbow is how the Azir gods like Thor came to Earth. This may be a way of saying they traveled at the speed of light. The Dogon people of Africa claim that their ancestors came from Sirius. They even knew about the binary star system of Sirius A and B long before Western science. Then, on the other side of Africa, we have a shaft from the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza that looked directly at Sirius. The pyramids, like the ziggurats, were landing stations for the gods. A Freemasonic legend states that Enoch had a vision that the world would be destroyed by water and then by fire. So he built 2 pillars on which he engraved all of his wisdom and knowledge of the arts and sciences. One was made of marble to withstand fire, and the other of bronze to survive the deluge. Some theorize that the Great Pyramid is one of these pillars and contains the knowledge encoded in its geometry. From other sources, such as Josephus, it was 2 tablets or steles that Enoch used. It may be that these tablets are under the sphinxes. Edgar Cayce, H. Spencer Lewis, and other psychics have made claims along these lines. There are 2 sphinxes, one on either side of the Nile, and water erosion on the one that has been excavated tells us that it is at least 7,000 years old. That is over 2,000 years before dynastic Egypt. Egypt comes up again in the Legend of Atlantis. At the end of Atlantean times, Atlantis sunk into the ocean. Some connect this with the global flood that ended that age. The survivors of Atlantis set off to sea. They brought what they could carry in their boats to survive in hopes that they would find land. A group of Atlanteans landed in Egypt, and that is why their architectural feats were so advanced and their empire so powerful in ancient times. After the flood, many mother cultures sprang up around the world, as well as more pyramidal buildings. The legendary hero Yu the Great of China was responsible for making a system of canals which directed the waters from the flood into the fields. Like Noah, Yu was the 9th generation from the first man, Yellow Emperor, and lived around 2200 BCE. Yu began the first dynasty in China. In the Pros Edda, Bergelmir and his wife were the only survivors of the flood and became the parents of a new race. From New Zealand, Rautapu survived the flood with help of a whale. According to the Inca, only 2 people are said to have survived Unu Pachacuti, the flood sent by the Peruvian god Viracocha. The Hopi tribe relates a myth about the god Tawa, who destroyed the 3rd world with a flood, and Spider-Woman, who helped the good people reach the 4th world on reed boats. At the destruction of each world cycle, the Ant people, or the gods, bring the righteous underground, where they can wait out the destruction with plenty of light and food. After the flood, Masau relocated the survivors in various lands with his ship without wings. The Ojibwa tribe gives us Wenabutu, who lived through the cleansing flood on a raft with animals. In Australian myth, Manawara and Multultu were driven forth in the flood but lived to become the ancestors of the Nambuti tribe. Welsh mythology has Dwyfan and Dwyvich as the 2 that built a large ship and placed 2 of each animal in it. After the flood, which was caused by Afanc, the sea monster, they repopulated the island Prydain, Britain. From Roman and Greek sources, we are told about Deucalion and Pyrrha. Deucalion was warned by his father Prometheus of the flood Zeus was sending, and that he should build a chest of wood to save himself and his wife. They made it to Mount Parnassus, where they gave thanks to Zeus. The couple repopulated the earth by throwing rocks, bones of their mother, over their shoulders, which turned into humans. In the Avesta, Yima was sent by Ahura Mazda to rule on the earth, but then he was warned that the earth is going to freeze over, so he must build an enclosure underground with 2 of every animal, plants, food, and water, and 2,000 men and women to repopulate the earth. Yima did so, and he made streets and artificial light for all to use while underground. Some mythologies have a flood myth that do not mention a hero/next first couple to repopulate the earth. For example, in Egyptian myths, Sekhmet creates a flood of blood over the earth by killing most of humanity. Similarly, the Aztec goddess Chalchiutlicu destroyed a cycle of humanity by flooding the earth with her tears of blood. There is no doubt that massive flooding wiped out much of the life on land in the past, and since that time we have been cultivating and repopulating the land. Flood heroes: India, Shraddha Manu; Persia, Yima; Sumeria, Ziusudra; Akkad, Atrahasis; Babylon, Utnapishtim; Judea, Noah; Greece and Rome, Deucalion; Celtic, Dwyfan; Germanic, Manus; Norse, Bergelmir; Peru, Manco Capac; North America, Wenabutu; China, Yu; Australia, Minawara and Multutu; New Zealand, Maui; Hawaii, Nu'u;